Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today is December 11th. And what do you think we're talking about today? Come on now. Ohtani, Dodgers, $700 million. Let's do it. Hello, everybody. My name is Steven. This is the middle of the order. How are we doing today? It is Monday. I hope you all had wonderful weekends. I feel much better from previous episode. But what do you think we're doing today? There's only really one thing on the agenda that's taken up more than half of the episode, and that is Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers. There's a couple other things we gotta talk about today, but that's the big one, and it stems from an even bigger day. And if Ohtani hadn't signed yet, that is what we would be talking about. We're still going to be talking about it. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, well, you're going to know, because what a day Friday was for the baseball world. For sports media, I guess, as a whole. Some people, man, just need to know when to not talk. And I'll be going into all of that and more. But let's not waste time. Let's talk about the things that people want to hear. And that is Shohei Ohtani to the Los Angeles Dodgers on a 10-year, $700 million deal. Now, before everyone's like, whoa, $70 million a year is absurd. You're right, it's not going to be $70 million a year. We know that for sure. There's going to be a lot of, in quotes, this is from MLB, unprecedented deferrals. Basically, that means that even though he's only playing for 10 years, he's guaranteed the $700 million, essentially $70 million a year. But let's say he gets $50 million a year. That means after the 10 years, he would have gone paid $500 million, and then probably we could have a deal where over the next 20 years, he gets $10 million. That makes up the $70 million or $700 million, excuse me, something along those lines. Where a lot of the money from the contract he'll be getting throughout years after he's done playing and more. I'm assuming it's something crazy if it's quote-unquote unprecedented deferrals. So like maybe he's getting paid like $30 million or even, somewhere around that range. This was apparently Shohei's idea, so the Dodgers could be more competitive and be more, build a better team around him. Not that they need to do that in terms of the offense, because their team now shapes up very nicely with obviously the big-headed dragon, the trio of Shohei, Freddie Freeman, and Mookie Betts. That's a crazy 1, 2, 3. Obviously, catcher Will Smith's there, Max Muncy. Mookie Betts is set to be at second base. We'll see how that does. Gavin Lux around there. James Outman, one of the finalists in Rookie of the Year. When it comes to the offense, the Dodgers don't really have that many holes to fill at this point. But it is that pitching that concerns me, because after Walker Buehler, it's a bunch of kids that are unproven, and then a veteran in Ryan Yarbrough right now that makes up the rotation. Obviously, I expect Clayton Kershaw to sign with the Dodgers at some point. It'd be weird seeing him in any other jersey at this point, so I'm hoping the Dodgers and Kershaw can make some sort of arrangement. But of course, we know Kershaw is going to be out until mid-June, July anyways. So we'll see what that does. But going back to Shohei, it's the largest contract in sports history, beating out Lionel Messi's $673 million contract with Barcelona a while back. It's a lot of money. To figure out how much money, I got some games here, some little tidbits, I guess you could say. Starting with the Arizona Coyotes, an NHL franchise. That franchise as a whole is worth $675 million. Ohtani is now worth more than that franchise. The $70 million is currently more than 8 current team payrolls, including the Guardians, Marlins, Royals, Brewers, Reds, Pirates, Oilers, and A's. Two of the biggest superstars in NBA, LeBron and Steph Curry, in their total careers have made $834 million. So that's just a little bit over what Ohtani's making in 10 years. And this one's one of my favorites. I saw this one today. Brock Purdy, who's one of the NFL MVP favorites right now, he's a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. He would need to play for over 800 years on his current salary to reach Ohtani's contract. Lot of money. A lot of money. Of course, it's not all going to be his. I saw something, I'm not sure how true this is. I'm not really I don't know the California taxes. But apparently after California taxes, his 70 a year becomes 34 mil a year, nearly 35 mil. So they pretty much take half of his money, just over half of his money. And there is no opt-out. Some thought there would be because of obviously his elbow surgery. He is not pitching in the 2024 season. But there is no opt-out. All 10 years he will be a Dodger. I didn't see anything about trade clauses, but I'm assuming there isn't any because how would the Dodgers trade that kind of contract to somebody? Yeah, it's just a lot of money. When you think of the Dodgers now, I mean, this is exactly what they needed. It's exactly what they were kind of gearing for because they were losing so much payroll. They lost guys over the last, 2 years, kind of preparing for this. Corey Seager, other guys that I can't think of right now except Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger even. Like, these are guys that the Dodgers had to shave from their payroll because they wanted to get Ohtani really bad. And, I mean, to be honest with you, if the Dodgers didn't sign Shohei, the question would have been, what do the Dodgers do? Like, they would have had to do a full 180, relook at their team because their whole, the last 2-3 years that they've been playing baseball in the front office, they've been preparing for this Ohtani move and this signing. And if they didn't sign him, it would have been chaos for the Dodgers. But they did. They don't have to worry about that. They get the unicorn, the best athlete currently right now, for a lot of money. I can't speculate how much money this is for Shohei. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but good. It's amazing for the Dodgers. You can sit here and speculate all these things about 10 years is such a long time. Will he be good at both pitching and hitting at the end of his career? What if he gets hurt? What if he falls off? All these different things. You can say it, but at the same time, it's like we've seen it now for a few years. Obviously, in 2018, he was the Rookie of the Year. 2019, kind of a calmer year. Not too much. He'd had some injury problems, of course. Then, of course, COVID year 2020. But after that, the last 3 years, from 2021 to now, he's been amazing. He's been an all-star all 3 years. He's been an MVP twice and was second in MVP in the one he didn't win. That was in 2022 when Judge won it. He has 2 Silver Sluggers. And that 2022 year where he was second in MVP, he was also fourth in Cy Young. His home runs, 46, 34, 44. He steals, 20 bases or so. RBIs, 195, 95. He is a dog. He goes out there pitching-wise or batting-wise. And pitching-wise is just the same thing almost, essentially. You can't, it's just as good, maybe better. Ohtani is, is he, I guess that's the question that everyone's, talking about. You can go and find some of the articles and things people are saying on Twitter and Reddit and all these other places. Is he really worth this kind of money? And I mean, you have to think about it from the business perspective as well, because he's not getting $700 million for what he just for being on the field, right? Because batting wise, Ohtani's probably getting $400 million. And then pitching wise, he's probably getting $250 million. And that other stuff, Ohtani is a marketable guy. He is one of, if not the most marketable guys right now in sports. He has all of America behind him. He has all of Japan and those Eastern Coastal teams behind his back, following him, watching him, wanting to see him play. He is a superstar. People want to come out to Dodger Stadium now Like, they're going to get a lot of this money back from revenue and from sales, from, jerseys. Otani's Dodger jersey is going to be the number one selling jersey this year. Like, that's hands down what's going to happen. Pitching wise, his ERA 3.18, 2.33, 3.14 in the last 3 years. Like, that's good. He's a good player. He's definitely, in my mind, it is definitely like when you see it on paper, it's like, wow, like eye popping, like, damn, that really is the money. But like when you actually sit back and think about it, like anything more than 700 mil would be a lot, but I think that's like the max that you could have gone. And that's probably why the Dodgers had to go that limits. They had to make sure they signed Ohtani because other teams, there was a couple of dark horses. The Angels were sneakily a dark horse, the Cubs, the Giants. But there was one other team that was right there, if not the favorite, to sign Ohtani at one point, and that was the Toronto Blue Jays. And now this brings us to a whole other can of worms to open. And I don't even know where to start with all of this information that stems from Friday. So Ohtani signs on Saturday with the Dodgers, but the day before Friday, and it was chaos on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, you name the social media platform. Things were getting out of hand, and it all started in the morning when Jon Morosi said Ohtani's decision was imminent and could sign as early as today. That is fine. That's to say he went on MLB Network that morning as well, saying essentially the same thing and saying how the Dodgers and Blue Jays are up there and they're both, close and competing. Well enough. Some Blue Jays fans took this another level and they came up with some sort of conspiracy theory that connected Ohtani to a plane. And that plane was the same plane apparently that Ohtani had flown in the past. There was pictures on his Instagram with the plane in the background, and that supposed plane was flying from Los Angeles, Anaheim, to Toronto that day. If you track that plane's history, before going to LA, it was in Hawaii, and before Hawaii, it was in Oakland. And this made people speculate that Ohtani met with the Giants when he was in Oakland, traveled to Hawaii where his supposed girlfriend is, spent some time there before heading back to LA, and then was flying to Toronto that day, that morning, on December 8th. Now, what is so special about this day? Well, apparently it's the day of luck in Japanese culture. It was the day he signed with the Angels. So people were thinking that Ohtani was flying to Toronto to sign a deal on December 8th, the same day, the day of luck, based on all of this information. And all of that, it's speculation, it's conspiracy, but it sounds right on paper, right? Later on in the day, Toronto fans are tracking the plane, things are getting wild. This is where things really start going poor, I would say. Jon Morosi, he tweets out, he says, Ohtani is traveling to Toronto today. This makes people lose their minds because then everything that, was being, talked about and rumored about, by Morosi saying this, people now believed it was true. They thought Ohtani was coming and a decision was going to be made and that Ohtani would have been a Blue Jay. An hour or so later after this tweet, here comes Bob Nightingale, and he says Ohtani is not in Toronto, and he is at home in Southern California. And now this is where people start losing their heads, because everyone's trying to wonder where Ohtani is. And this is kind of the whole thing, is that people were thinking Ohtani was coming, and it wasn't. And he was actually at home, but he was in the air at the same time heading to Toronto, and people were starting to wonder, where is Ohtani? You could see it. The people were going crazy about all this. All the news that kept coming out, people kept buying into and kept believing in, and most of it turned out to be fake. The person on the plane that was heading from LA to Toronto was actually a Shark Tank member. He actually had a funny Instagram post about it later on, photoshopped his face onto, I believe, Adam Simber's body, saying that he would, of course, take a huge contract to play for the Blue Jays, which was pretty funny. But yeah, it's a tough day for Toronto Blue Jays fans, regardless. And then obviously the next day when he signs with LA, it probably got even harder. The fact that Toronto was even in play for Ohtani is a big thing. You know, the Blue Jays and Toronto, because they're based in Canada, they do have a harder time signing free agents. They never really get the big superstar free agent. And this could have changed, Toronto sports history entirely if Ohtani went there. Of course, he didn't. But the big issue, I guess, with this and what some fans are unhappy about, more so they're unhappy with John Morosi. There was another Dodgers reporter who, is apparently high class. He's a double BBAWW member. And he said that Ohtani had declined the Dodgers and was planning on staying with the Blue Jays, which is like, okay, when you're up to that kind of level of pedigree, like, you're putting your career out making that kind of claim. So, what happens to him now? Because he also was lying that day and didn't know anything, People are mostly upset, or at least Blue Jays fans are mostly upset with John Morosi for the tweet saying that Ohtani is traveling to Toronto today. Obviously, after getting it wrong, he came back on Twitter and apologized for jumping the gun a little bit. Basically, it was an arson judge situation last year with John Heyman, which kind of brings me to the point I want to make here, and that Ohtani wanted to take this free agency in a direction of secrecy. He wanted to handle it on his own and not have a lot of it in the media. And these sports journalisms, quote unquote, they feed for this stuff. They want it really badly. They want to be the guy who makes the report, who says this is happening, especially with someone as high class and as important as this Ohtani decision was. They wanted to make it like the LeBron decision special that ESPN did, where they sat him in a room and, talked about all 6 teams that he was going to go for before deciding to sign with the Heat. They wanted to make it like that, and Ohtani didn't want that. And you could say it didn't make sense. That's what Ken Rosenthal was saying this whole time, was that he wanted it to be public. But of course, that's the sports journalism mindset approach. They want to be able to talk about it, and they want to be able to write about it. And if they don't know anything, then what are you writing about? And from that perspective, I can understand it, but at the same time, Ohtani's the player. Ohtani's the one in charge. He gets to make the decisions that he wants to make. And if he wanted to keep things private, people should have respected that, and they didn't. Instead, they try to push buttons, figure out fake stories to tell people just to see if they were getting it right. And then when they didn't, I'm sorry, and then they're going to go do the same thing the next day. And that's my whole issue with it. And I spend a lot of time on Twitter jumping from these guys to see what they're saying and see, what's the next move or who's in on who. And realistically, the only baseball reporter that you should trust, you should care about, is Jeff Passan. All these other guys don't have a clue what's going on, especially John Morosi. I mean, you could say who you want. John Heyman's not any better. Bob Nightingale, even Ken Rosenthal for a while when I was younger, I thought he was the only credible source. I mean, even he nowadays, it's just he says what he wants to say, and I respect him for that part. But a lot of the time, it's not even accurate either until somebody else says it, and that's usually Jeff Passan, because Jeff Passan is smart and he doesn't tweet anything unless he knows it or he's retweeted someone else saying something that he now knows. Other people will speculate and make, and just say things to say things. That's my only issue, I guess, with the whole baseball, sports media point of view of this, is that any given day, and you can go on Twitter and find random accounts that just say this stuff. It's always sources say that this player is in with this team, or this team's in on this player, this team is interested in this player and could make a trade. And that's the whole thing. And in a way, there's beauty in it, and it's fun to just talk and speculate. But at the same time, too, if you're actually a reporter, if you're actually a big person in the media cycle, you can't just be doing that same thing. If you're a random nobody, yeah, have fun with it. Say what you want. Ohtani signs with the Oakland Athletics, But if you are a person that's, they go to the games, you get the special VIP passes, you're a BBW or BBAWW writer, and you vote for the Hall of Fame, for crying out loud, you can't be saying this kind of stuff any given day. And now it's going to be the same thing with probably Bellinger. Bellinger in with the Mariners. Bellinger in with the Blue Jays. Bellinger could be going back to the Dodgers reunion. How crazy would that be? It's probably not going to happen. Don't say it unless you know it's true. It's that kind of stuff that kind of got to people's nerves the other day, and why this whole thing kind of blew up as it is, and why we had the arson judge last year, and now we have the Ohtani flight this year, whatever people are going to be calling it. It's it's a bad look for the game. It's not something that, for me as a baseball fan, I'm happy with. So yeah, John Morosi right now is not, he's closer to public enemy number one than he is just a normal baseball writer. And, we'll have to see how the rest of the offseason plays off, but that's something that you, as your level, being on MLB Network for, you can't do that. And it was just a frustrating thing that happened the day before Ohtani signed with the Dodgers. So Blue Jay fans kind of went through it in that 48-hour cycle there. But let's keep going here. Move past the Ohtani news for a little bit and talk some other baseball news. And let's start with the Atlanta Braves, who keep making trades. They keep trading for players and then trading those players away for other players. Who do they want? Who do they really want? It started a couple days ago. The Braves traded Evan White and Tyler Thomas to the Los Angeles Angels in exchange for David Fletcher and Max Stassi. Now, of course, the Braves, one of the original trades that they had done, was for Kelenic, Marco Gonzalez, and Evan White from the Mariners. Since that trade, Marco Gonzalez is now a Pirate, and now Evan White has been shipped to the Angels. So what does this mean? Who knows? But David Fletcher, I guess, is the biggest name of note in this trade. The guy that, obviously I know all the players, but David Fletcher, I guess, holds the most pedigree. In 2020, he was 17th in MVP voting. He never really been an all-star, never really been an elite second baseman. 2021, he had a really good year where he was averaging 262, an OPS of 622. Obviously, his best year comes in around 2019, 2020 with the COVID year. He's an okay second baseman. He's probably going to be that backup middle infielder, I guess, for the Braves. If he lasts that long, who knows if he doesn't get traded. And the reason I'm saying that is because now recently the Braves swapped Max Stassi to the White Sox in exchange for a player to be named later. So the Braves just said, hey, White Sox, you want him? Here you go. So now Max Stassi is the backup White Sox catcher, I guess, because I believe Grandal is still there. But yeah, so essentially this trade that the Braves just got, one of the players is already on the White Sox. Like, they're doing a whole lot of, A trade for these two players, and I'm taking this player, sending him this guy for these two players, and I'm taking this player, and I'm sending him away for this guy. It's a really, kind of just fun thing to happen, I guess. I mean, the Braves, on paper, are already a great team. I mean, Sean Murphy behind the dish, Matt Olson at first, Ozzie at second, Austin Riley at third, Ronald Acuna, Michael Harris in the outfield. Now Kelenic's there, and Kelenic could be a real piece out there. The Braves have a really strong lineup. It's more, working on the pitching and everything. So all these tradings for backups and everything, it's just creating more depth for the Braves. Because, I mean, let's say someone like Ozzie gets hurt, that sucks, but David Fletcher can definitely fill a role while he heals. So that's kind of what the Braves are up to right now, and I think it's working out for them. Obviously, you can't say it does until we actually see it in the season. But it's been fun seeing them kind of make these moves, take players and, ship them off to other teams within days. So we'll see where that roller coaster ride stops for the Braves, but it's something fun that I want to talk about briefly, of course. Now let's talk about a really impactful trade in my mind, that the Red Sox have made an agreement with the St. Louis Cardinals to acquire Tyler O'Neill for two right-handed pitchers, Nick Robertson and Victor Santos. Now, obviously the big name in this deal, Tyler O'Neill, the left fielder from Canada, and he's had quite a nice career over there at St. Louis. He spent 6 years, debuted in 2018. He's a two-time Gold Glove winner. In 2021, he finished 8th in NL MVP voting with a pretty crazy season when you think about it. He had 34 home runs with a OPS of 912. But since then, hasn't been able to recreate that magic. In the last few seasons, his OPS is at around 700, 715. His home runs have dropped from 34 to 14 to 9. Didn't even make double digits this year. He's a power guy, but he strikes out a ton. Obviously, this year, of course, he did miss some time with injury, as well as just bouncing around from, other things. Only played 72 games this year, 96 games last year, and then 2021, which was his crazy best year with 34 home runs, he played 138. So a healthy, full-seasoned Tyler O'Neill could do wonders for Boston. Obviously, he's there to kind of replace Adam Duvall, who is now a free agent. He's got a lot of pop. He is fast. He'll steal some bases here and there. 15 stolen bases a couple years ago. So we'll see what Boston does with O'Neill. I think it's a nice fit. I think he'll do quite well there with other outfielders like Jarren Duran and Masataka Yoshida. He brings the power. He brings, some good defense. Like I said, two-time Gold Glove winner. So we'll see what Boston has in store for Tyler O'Neill. But I like the move. We'll see if it's the change of environment will help him. Obviously, you're going from a very easy division from the NL Central to one of, if not the hardest divisions in baseball in the AL East. But we'll see how Tyler O'Neill fits in, of course, once the season starts. All right, moving on. The next thing on the agenda, last episode towards the end, we had a live reaction of Yeimer Candelario signing with the Reds. And now we've got the details of said contract. It's a 3 years, $45 million. That's 15 mil annually per year. And I really like what the Reds are doing this offseason. They're definitely have kind of been sneakily under the radar. They've gotten some pitching help, guys like Nick Robertson, Emilio Pagan, getting Candelario to sign with you now. We saw them last year, how much better they were than people were thinking. They were around that 80 win mark, that 82 win mark. And, we didn't expect much for them going into the season because, it's the Reds, But they called up a lot of young guys. Of course, injuries did play a part in it. Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, kind of the 1-2 of that staff, went down with injury. So their pitching staff remained used up a lot of young guys, prospects, and talent that came up and shined. But it wasn't just pitching. The offense as well was built up of a lot of prospects and young guys. Ellie De La Cruz came on the scene bursting with energy and flair. Spencer Steer. The list goes on. I just couldn't, there's like 5 or 6, Reds rookies that were really impactful for the Reds. And when you have young talent like that, you go out and you sign some bullpen help. You go out and sign a veteran kind of guy like Candelario is. And all of a sudden, the Reds are kind of building up for a really strong year, essentially. A year where they could, if all things going to plan, compete for the division, Candelario, he's kind of, been an underrated third baseman. Nothing too crazy every now and then. This year, both with the Nationals and Cubs, he had an OPS of 807. Last year at Detroit, 633. The year before that, 795. Then in COVID year, 872. So we've seen his OPS kind of fluctuate throughout the years. The home run numbers, they're there. 22, 13, 16, RBI, 70, 50, 67 the last couple of years or so. He's a guy that's done it, for multiple teams now as well. He's been with Detroit, obviously the majority of his career with the 6 years there. 3 years with the Cubs, technically, 2 years before his years with Detroit, and then one kind of this year after being traded with the Nationals. So the Reds are now his 4th team. He's done it in both the AL and the NL. So yeah, I think it's a good move for Cincinnati. It's worth it in my mind. Candelario is one of those guys, a switch hitter too. That's not every day you come by. I'm not saying he is the Jose Ramirez of now the NL, but a third baseman that can switch hit. You can play a decent defense out there. If you're in Cincinnati, this is exactly the player that you want, kind of in the middle of your lineup there, and I expect that's where he'll be batting, somewhere around the 5-6 hole area. But it's a good move. In Cincinnati, if they keep going like this, keep getting a couple smaller, under-the-radar signings, I think we're really going to be talking about their team as a possible contender come the 2024 season. All right, moving on now. We've got the 2024 World Series champions, and it's the Kansas City Royals. Congratulations to the Kansas City Royals. They have signed Will Smith to a 1-year, $5 million deal to come out of the bullpen and eat up some innings there. Of course, Will Smith, in 2021, he was with the Braves and won a World Series with them. In 2022, he was traded to Houston, where he won a World Series with them. And of course, last year, in 2023, he was with Texas and won a World Series with them. So he's won the World Series the last 3 years. So right now, the Royals signed him for a 1-year, $5 million deal. Whoever, if they end up trading him later in the season at the trade deadline to another team, that team probably wins the World Series. Of course, Will Smith, he's an okay pitcher, especially out of the bullpen and everything, but no one's elite guy. Except for 2019, when he was with the Giants, he had a spectacular year. He had 63 games that he pitched out of, and he was 6-0. He did not lose a game. He saved 34 games for the Giants, was an all-star for the first and so far only time in his career. Pitched 65 innings. So, he's been around. This could be his 12th season. He actually started his career with the Kansas City Royals in 2012 and 2013 when he first made his debut. So he's back with Kansas City after, 10 years later. So good for him, good for the Royals. We've got a couple other relief pitcher signings that happened recently. Andrew Chafin, he signs a 1-year, $4.75 million deal with the Tigers. Andrew Chafin, known for some of the best facial hair in the league. His mustache is very powerful. Last year, obviously, with the Arizona Diamondbacks before getting moved to the Brewers at the deadline. In total, his last year, he pitched 64 games, 57 innings. He pitched to a 4.73 ERA. So, but for a lefty, that's not bad. And, he's a veteran. He's been around for a long time as well. This will be his 11th year in the league. Excuse me. So he knows what he's doing there as well. And then Jorge Lopez, he signs with the Mets for a 1-year, $2 million deal. Jorge Lopez, if you remember him kind of mostly from the year with Baltimore where he really came out on his own, that would have been in 2022 when he was also traded. He was an all-star that year with Baltimore, the first and so far only time that he's been an all-star. And then after the all-star game and towards trade deadline, he was then traded to Minnesota, where he never really, found it from there. Last year, he bounced around with 3 different teams, obviously starting off in Minnesota and then moving to Miami, where then he was then moved to Baltimore to finish off the year there. Played 12 games with Baltimore to a 5.25 ERA. With Miami, it was a 9.26. In total last year, his ERA, 5.13. So, what are you going to get out of him? They're hoping for the 2022 for him, but, like the Mets said, they're not planning on competing next year. So, sign 1 year with the Mets. Hopefully he pitches well. Great. You're going to need a guy to fill up the bullpen anyways. And, for $2 million to get Lopez, the Mets will happily take that. So those are some of the relief pitcher signings that happened. We've got a couple other smaller signings here, not relief pitchers. Nick Senzel, 5 years with the Reds. He's moving on now. He signs a deal with the Nationals for 1 year, $2 million. And he had an okay year last year as well. He's kind of a middle of the order kind of guy. Outfielder, infielder, kind of utility player. OPS of 696. He had 13 home runs, 42 RBIs with the Reds last year. Played in 104 games. He was never really found it. Once a high-end prospect, I guess, for the Reds. In his first year, and still probably his best year, in 2019, his OPS of 742, the highest he's ever had. 30 walks, ties the high he's ever had, 12 home runs, 42 RBIs, the most he's ever had. Tied with actually this year. In 2023, he had 42 RBIs as well. So maybe a change of scenery will help out the utility guy. Specializes in center field, but does play some third base and some second base as well. We'll see how the Nationals end up using him. But he's off to start a new part of his journey in his career here. And then we have one other signing that happened recently, and that was Austin Hedges. He is heading back to Cleveland as he signs with the Guardians for a 1 year, $4 million deal. Hedges has been around now for quite a while. This is going to be his 10th year in the majors. His most time he spent was with the Padres at the start of his career. He debuted in 2015. And then after being traded to Cleveland in 2020, he spent 3 years there with the Guardians and Indians. Before getting shipped around the last couple of years, he's gone from Cleveland to Pittsburgh and to Texas last year, where he was a World Series champion. But he is heading back to Cleveland to continue his time there. And supposedly will be the backup catcher for Bo Naylor, who I'm sure will be taking full-time catcher privileges heading into the 2023 season. So there's a move there for the Guardians. But it's not everything that's happened for the Guardians, because with that signing of Austin Hedges, they have decided to trade Christian Bethancourt. He is being moved now to the Marlins in exchange for some cash considerations. And if I'm being honest with you, I didn't even realize Bethancourt was on the Cleveland Guardians. I had to look this up. He was selected off of waivers by Cleveland November 8th of this year, so obviously very recent, just over a month ago. But obviously, he's never actually played with the Guardians despite being on their team. He was with Tampa. That's where I know him from as well. The last 2 years are kind of when I've heard of him, essentially. But he's been in the league really since 2013 with the Braves. He had 1 game, 1 plate appearance, and he struck out. From there, though, he played the next 4 seasons with the Braves and Padres from 2013 to 2017. And then there's a huge gap where I believe he probably goes back to the minors, or I'm not really sure. But then he comes back up in 2022, starts the year in Oakland, gets moved to Tampa. And then last year, with the Rays in his age 31 season, he had an okay year, 635 OPS, hit 11 home runs, 33 RBIs. Kind of what you want from a backup catcher, I guess. Of course, they were using him more as a full-time catcher. He played in 104 games. But for the Marlins now, Jacob Stallings being a free agent, we'll see kind of what Bethancourt does with the Marlins. Does he take over the full catcher time position there? I'm not sure, but we'll see what Miami decides to do with him there. Will he be a backup or a starter? And then, for the last trade to talk about, I guess, really quickly here, one happened this morning between the Yankees and the Dodgers. The Yankees are acquiring Victor Gonzalez and Jorbit Vivas from the Dodgers in exchange for Trey Sweeney, is who the Dodgers end up getting. All these guys are guys that are prospects, young guys, except for Victor Gonzalez. This was a guy that, people might remember because in 2021, I believe. He was pretty impressive in the short sample size, obviously coming more out of the bullpen for the Dodgers, but he played in 44 games to a 3.57 ERA. This year with the Dodgers in 2023, he played in 34 games to a 4 ERA. Was 3-3. He had one start, so he is more of a reliever, left-handed pitcher. And to be honest, this trade only happens for one reason only, and that's because the Dodgers needed two guys off of their 40-man roster, i.e. Victor Gonzalez and Jorbit Vivas, in exchange for someone who isn't on a 40-man roster. The Yankees did not have Trey Sweeney on their 40-man roster, and this move works perfectly for the Dodgers, who get to free up two spots for Joe Kelly and Shohei Ohtani, who signed recently, and they will join the Dodgers 40-man roster. So that clears them some space there. That's the only reason that move really happened in the first place. But that's going to do it for us today as well. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Some smaller things happening besides the biggest thing that's going to happen this offseason, of course, which was the Ohtani signing. 10 years, $700 million. Good God. Can I just say one thing, though? I'm quite happy Ohtani has finally signed and he has found a new home, because now we can actually start talking about other starting pitchers and get through some other big names that have been kind of quiet so far. Obviously, guys like Cody Bellinger and Blake Snell, they were not going to sign before Ohtani was. So now that Ohtani signed, some of these guys will finally get a chance to be in the limelight for a little bit. But yeah, the deal is done. Ohtani is a Dodger, and this episode is over. Thank you, everybody, so much, and I will see you guys next time.